The UFC president's decision to physically abuse his wife raises concerns about his suitability to continue leading the world's largest mixed martial arts organization. Seeing people's reactions to such an act by Dana White is a great thing. What do you think would be the effect of the UFC without Dana White? Could it be like the UFC before? Watch this video fully for the utmost information. First, the moment has come to think about a UFC without Dana White. In all honesty, how do you see the UFC without Dana White? You may not have seen one without him, but you will most likely get to that moment soon. What makes it a thing of possibility? Dana White went against his words and is now left to fight his words. In the wake of a video showing former Baltimore Ravens running back Ray Rice savagely hitting his fiancée, Dana White, the president of the UFC, used the occasion to speak out against domestic violence 9 years ago. Fox quoted White as adding that touching a woman is one thing people never recover from. He claimed that you don't recover from putting your hands on a lady, adding that it has always been like that in the UFC when they first began competing there. White, 53, was recently seen on camera fighting with his wife Ann at a New Year's Eve party in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, despite his firm attitude. TMZ released a Monday video showing Ann slapping White in a bar. Before others stepped in, White attempted to assault her again after returning the slap. The following day, White revealed the terrible incident in an interview with TMZ. He asserted that there is never a justification for a man touching a woman, yet there they were on TMZ discussing it. White claimed that while this is a terrible circumstance and he feels ashamed, it is also one in which they are currently more worried for their children. He claimed that they have 3 children and that as a result of the video's appearance and showing it to the children, they are currently more concerned with their family. The UFC president insisted that this occurrence was a first for this kind of altercation. He asserted that this was the first time he had offered no defenses for them. The pair overindulged in alcohol on New Year's Eve, according to Ann in a separate statement to TMZ, and things spiraled out of hand for both parties. The UFC president's decision to physically beat his wife raises concerns about his suitability to continue leading the world's most effective mixed martial arts organization, despite White's efforts to control the narrative. White has held the position of UFC president for more than 20 years. He assumed it in 2001 after his business partners, casino moguls Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta, paid $2 million to acquire the organization. The UFC developed into a global powerhouse under White's leadership, and in July 2016 it was bought for $4 billion, making it the most expensive sports transaction ever. The media and entertainment business Endeavor, which now owns the UFC, had its shares decrease about 6% when the news of the altercation became public, despite the UFC's sustained success and expanding profit margins. This might compel Endeavor to distance itself from White, along with the PR nightmare of witnessing the president of a combat sports organization strike his wife in front of the public. It's hard to picture a commissioner of a large sports league like the NBA or NFL punching their partner without suffering serious repercussions. Even White suggested Goodell could get up and leave on his own when asked whether NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell should retire in the wake of his handling of the Rice domestic violence case in 2014. Though the UFC's treatment of domestic abuse allegations has been, at best, inconsistent, it is unlikely that White will suffer repercussions for his behavior. Contrary to White's assertion that athletes never recover from hitting women, numerous UFC athletes have competed in the company after being accused of sexual or domestic abuse over the years. In 2018, Greg Hardy, a former NFL defensive end who had been found guilty of beating his ex-girlfriend, made his UFC debut alongside Rachel Ostovich, a competitor who had also experienced domestic abuse. When White eventually came under fire for his views on Hardy, he accused the media of fomenting unrest. White claimed that he wasn't playing this nonsense with his guys. He declared that Hardy was on the UFC roster. End of the story. Domestic violence has always long been a problem in the MMA community. According to HBO's Real Sports, MMA fighters were arrested more frequently for domestic abuse than NFL players in 2015, more than double the national average. The sport continues to produce prominent domestic violence instances. Just hours after he was inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame in 2021, former UFC light heavyweight champion John Jones was detained in connection with an alleged incident involving his wife and their children. He was first charged with domestic violence, but the allegation was dismissed after reaching a plea agreement with prosecutors. A few weeks later, in Southern California, UFC Hall of Famer Chuck Liddell was detained on suspicion of domestic violence against his wife. The arrest was followed by no charges being brought. The UFC and the sport have been tarnished by been numerous instances of domestic violence, the most recent being White's physical altercation with his wife. The UFC and Endeavor, the UFC's parent company, have not commented on the Guardian's request for information. ESPN, the UFC's broadcast partner, forwarded the Guardian to the UFC's PR department. In an ironic turn of events, White also serves as the spokesperson for Power Slap, a brand new competitive open-handed hitting league. The so-called sport will consist of contests in which two competitors square off and trade slaps to the face. Beyond the obvious scandal surrounding the choice of a man who slapped his wife to lead a new slap fighting league, medical experts have voiced their doubts about the group's health and safety procedures and if contestants will be protected against traumatic brain damage. When this similar article was written, Warner Media, the parent company of TBS, had not responded to an actual request for comment on White. While White's most recent endeavor is his new slap fighting league, the UFC still considers him to be its face, but his most recent issue might be a watershed in the history of the company, forcing us to imagine the UFC without Dana White as president. As White once stated, "You don't recover from placing your hands on a lady." Next up, the California Legislative Women's Caucus demands that Dana White be fired as president of the UFC right away. The California Legislative Women's Caucus has demanded that Dana White be fired as the president of the UFC in a letter addressed to Endeavor CEO Ari Emanuel. "It's been a great time, and there have been reactions all over the internet toward the letter, replies with different takes, but how does it matter when it's out already and already serving the purpose for which it was sent anyways?" A video that featured White and his wife Ann at a New Year's Eve celebration in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, was made public earlier this month. The UFC boss grabbed Ann's wrist and spoke to her as she appeared to be in distress. After Ann slapped White, White retaliated with at least one blatant slap. The UFC, Endeavor, and even Turner Sports, who will air White and the UFC's new Power Slap League on TBS starting on January 18th, have neglected to comment on the event since it became widely known. The group voiced its profound worry about the video and the lack of response from all parties in a published letter. The letter claims that he has been silent in the days since the release of the video and that this silence speaks volumes. It argues that he previously stated that remaining quiet and doing nothing are options. They all concur, according to the letter, and they implore him to act immediately. They are individuals who live by their values just like he does. They claim to be activists, allies against violence, supporters of women, and parents just like him. It argues that, as a result, it is obvious why Mr. White should be fired immediately as president of the UFC. In a subsequent interview with TMZ that coincided with the publication of the footage, White professed regret for the incident, claimed there were no excuses, and acknowledged that the public would probably criticize him, admittedly rightfully so. In response to the horrible footage of Ray Rice attacking his fiancée in 2014, White has previously stated that you don't recover from touching a woman. The possible hypocrisy is another crucial argument made by the advocacy group that raises questions. How can White be in a position to punish a UFC fighter in the future if he doesn't receive any discipline for his role in a domestic violence incident? According to the letter, Mr. White is the UFC's boss who establishes the standards for the athletes as well as its public face. It states that Mr. White is the UFC leader who will have to decide the consequences if an athlete commits domestic violence against their partner. Mr. White has previously said that he firmly opposes domestic violence. The entire world is watching him and Endeavor. It claims that a major athletic organization's president cannot advocate for the safety of women when a video of him hitting his wife is still making the rounds online and you are silent about it. Additionally, it asserts that enough is enough and that the hypocrisy is stunning. To provide Mr. White and his partner the chance to receive the support they require and to serve as a reminder of what Endeavor stands for and that you do not support violence against women, it is time to remove Mr. White from his position of leadership. Senator Nancy Skinner and Assemblywoman Cecilia Aguirre Curry, the group's chair and vice chair respectively, signed the letter. Seeing it coming from a respected man of his caliber is grievous and disappointing. What do you feel about Dana White's possible absence from the UFC? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Remember to like and share this video. You can also subscribe to our channel for more content. Thank you for watching. Bye.